So your immune system can have a profound effect on how you think and act. One of the clearest examples of this is when our immune system is actively fighting off a viral infection. For those of us who haven't been sick recently, imagine you've just returned back from a vacation abroad, a very well-deserved vacation abroad. But a few days later, you start to notice a runny nose, and you start to think about those crowded airports filled with coughs and sneezes. A few days later, you develop a fever, and you start to feel fatigued, lethargic. You want to pull blankets over yourself, and you start withdrawing from the world. Maybe you're a little bit more irritable, and anything that requires deep thought all of a sudden becomes a chore. And this is unlike yourself, right? This is out of character. But you know you're sick, and likely you have a viral infection. The good news for you is that most viral infections come and go, as do these sickness behaviors. But what we're learning from things like long COVID is that viral infections can have an effect on our behaviors and our cognition long after we think a virus has been cleared. And these fall under the umbrella of post-viral syndromes, which for many can be extremely debilitating. What we don't know are the factors that contribute to whether an infection or its associated immune response will lead to lingering neuropsychiatric symptoms. So, as a psychiatrist and an immunologist, my goal is to bridge fundamental scientific discoveries in neuroimmunology with the clinical practice of mental health care. And this translational work is a relatively new field called immunopsychiatry. My current research aims to understand how immune responses to viral infections can either help or hurt brain development and behavior. And so my work focuses on kids because they're uniquely vulnerable to viral infections during a period of time when their immune system is still maturing. And this is also happening in the context of the brain developing. So the brain is still wiring, setting the stage for a lifetime. And so even temporary insults like injuries and infections can have lasting impacts on brain health, which can range depending on the timing of the insult and the severity of the insult, from brain malformations to neurodevelopmental disorders. And so, as I mentioned, I'm interested in the intersection between the immune system and brain development. A key factor that I study are a brain cell type called the microglia. And so microglia are the dominant immune cell type in the brain and play pivotal roles in brain development. But they're also essential first responders to viral infections. And they do this by mounting an antiviral response called an interferon response. What our lab has recently shown is that there's a small subset of microglia in the healthy brain that also transiently turn on this antiviral signature when no virus is present. And we call these interferon responsive microglia. By turning on this shared cellular machinery, it gives these microglia during development the essential and unique role of eliminating whole neurons in the cortex of the brain, which is an important step in development as the brain hones its structure and refines its connections. And so factors that influence interferon signaling in early life are positioned to profoundly impact brain development and behavior. And so what if the cost of fighting off a viral infection that turns on this interferon response is excess elimination of neurons while brain circuitry is being formed? To study this, I've developed an early life viral infection model in mice. So I infect newborn mice with a common childhood virus through the gut, which is its natural route of infection. And this is in contrast to existing viral infection models, which either study viral illnesses in the context of adults, so not brain development, or through direct injection virus into the brain, which is not its natural route of infection. So the immunology is fundamentally different, and its clinical application is more limited. But most importantly, these mice develop a moderate illness that's only transient. So all of these mice survive, allowing us to study downstream behavioral consequences. And so what have we seen so far? What I'm showing you here is a section of a mouse brain during peak infection. In green are these microglia, so these immune cell types in the brain. And in magenta, I have this antiviral immune response. When you overlay green and purple together in this image, you get this cyan, a whitish color. But what I want to draw your attention to is, one, there's a massive amount of green in this brain, so there is active inflammation. But secondly, it's not uniform across the brain. They're actually impacted in discrete locations in the brain, such as the cortex, which is important for higher order functioning, decision making, planning motor movements, and integrating sensory inputs. They're also impacting the midbrain and the thalamus, which are both important relay stations for this sensory information. And if you zoom in on one of these hotspots of inflammation and infection, what I've outlined in red and yellow are two microglia. What they're doing in this picture is that they're wrapping themselves around not just one cell, not just two cells, but many cells, and presumably indiscriminately if they're virally infected or not. And so they're eating lots of cells in these regions. So ongoing questions that are important to answer that I'm continuing to pursue are what factors lead to this region-specific interferon response? Why are certain regions in the brain more susceptible than others to either inflammation or infection? And because of the regional specificity, what are the molecular and behavioral consequences of this early life viral infection? And what I can tell you already is that we have seen some lasting behavioral changes in this mouse model. In my own clinic, I specialize in treating children and adults with neuropsychiatric symptoms with suspected immune cause. And typically, these neuropsychiatric symptoms are only partially responsive to our traditional psychiatric treatments. All the while, these symptoms are interfering with key tasks like educational, social development. And so if we can understand how the immune system and the developing brain react to infection, we have a chance to intervene and limit the behavioral consequences of viral infection. And as a medical community, we've done a fantastic job of building out a suite of therapeutics that can target the immune system. We just haven't been able to apply them to psychiatry yet. And that's largely because of our limitations in understanding the intersection between the immune system and mental health. And so if we can identify those who are at risk, those who may benefit from immune-based therapies for psychiatric illness, this will be paradigm shifting for the field of psychiatry.